The Prince and the Mermaid's Cavern. The kingdom of Lyrian stretched along a rugged coast, where the turquoise sea whispered secrets to those willing to listen. It was a land of rolling hills and towering cliffs, where fishermen spoke of strange shapes in the water, and sailors told tales of enchanting songs that lured them dangerously close to the rocks. Among the skeptics and dreamers of the kingdom was Prince Adrien, a young man with a restless heart and a mind forever wandering beyond the borders of his father's rule. Adrien had always been drawn to the sea, finding solace in its rhythmic ebb and flow. But tonight, the waves spoke differently. The air was heavy with salt and mystery as he wandered the cliffs, the moon casting a silver sheen over the restless waters. A faint glimmer caught his eye, a sparkle among the jagged rocks below. Descending carefully, he found something remarkable, a single, iridescent scale, unlike any he had ever seen. It shimmered in shades of silver and blue, warm to the touch as though it pulsed with life. His heart raced. Could this be what the sailors had whispered about in hushed tones? The mermaids, the fabled guardians of an underwater realm. Legends said they possessed otherworldly beauty and a treasure more precious than gold, the secret of immortality. Adrien pocketed the scale and hurried back to the castle, his mind aflame with questions. That night, sleep came fitfully. His dreams were strange and vivid. He saw a vast underwater cavern, glowing with bioluminescent light, where mermaids swam in graceful circles. Their voices wove a haunting melody, and their eyes, ancient and knowing, seemed to peer into his soul. One figure, larger than the others, stepped forward, her hair cascading like streams of silver. She spoke, but her words were unintelligible, lost in the tide of his dream. When Adrien awoke, the scale lay on his bedside table, glinting in the first rays of dawn. It was real, and so was his resolve. His curiosity led him to the castle's archive, a dusty chamber rarely visited by anyone but the court historian, Erinos. Adrien found the old man hunched over a map, muttering to himself. Erinos had once been a sailor. His youth spent charting uncharted waters, and his knowledge of the sea was unparalleled. What brings the prince to a forgotten corner of the castle? Erinos's voice was dry, but his eyes sparkled with mischief. Adrien placed the scale on the table without a word. The historian's demeanor shifted immediately, his breath catching. "Where did you find this?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Adrien explained, leaving out nothing, not even the dreams. When he finished, Erinos sat back with a sigh, stroking his grey beard. "I never thought I'd live to see proof," he murmured. This is from their realm." "Whose realm?" Adrien pressed. "The mermaids," Erinos replied gravely. "Guardians of the Cavern of Eternity. It's said they hold the secret of immortality, but their domain is not easily reached, and they are not kind to intruders." Adrien leaned forward, his voice filled with determination. "How do I find it?" Erinus hesitated, then rose slowly, retrieving a battered scroll from a hidden compartment in his desk. Unrolling it revealed a map marked with strange runes and symbols. "This is a map to the entrance of their cavern," he said. "But heed my warning, the path is perilous. And if you reach the mermaids, you must be prepared to pay a price. They do not give their secrets freely." Adrian studied the map, a mixture of fear and exhilaration coursing through him. He thanked Erinus and left the archive, clutching the map as though it might vanish. As he stepped into the bright morning, the call of the sea seemed stronger than ever. Standing on the cliffs that evening, Adrian stared at the horizon, the map clutched in one hand and the scale in the other. The waves whispered his name again, urging him forward. Deep within, he felt an unshakable pull, as if his destiny lay beneath the surface of the ocean. "I will find you," he whispered, his voice lost in the roar of the sea. And with that, his journey began. The sea was restless as Prince Adrian prepared for his journey. The map Erinus had entrusted to him was unlike anything he had seen. Its parchment tinged with an otherworldly glow and etched with shifting runes that seemed alive under the moonlight. Adrian studied it carefully in his chambers, tracing the intricate paths and symbols with his fingers. The map depicted a chain of jagged islands, surrounded by spiraling currents and marked with warnings written in a language he couldn't decipher. At its center was a glowing symbol, a swirling vortex that must be the entrance to the legendary cavern. Adrian knew he couldn't undertake this voyage alone. He sought out Solorian, his most trusted companion, a steadfast knight with a weathered face and a heart of iron. Lorien listened silently as Adrian explained his mission, his brow furrowing only slightly at the mention of mermaids. "I've followed you into battles more dangerous than this," Lorien said at last, his voice steady. "If this is the path you've chosen, I will walk it with you." They set sail the next morning, their small ship cutting through the waves like an arrow. Adrian brought only the essentials: food, water, the map, and the silver scale, which he kept close as a talisman. The sea seemed to welcome them at first, its waters calm and its skies clear. Yet, as they ventured further, the air grew heavier, the horizon darkening with a foreboding mist. 3 days into their voyage, a storm descended without warning. The winds howled like banshees, and the waves rose like mountains, crashing against the ship with relentless fury. Adrian clung to the helm, his knuckles white as he fought to keep them on course. Lorien secured the sails, shouting instructions over the roar of the storm. But the sea was unforgiving, and a monstrous wave slammed into the vessel, splintering its mast and tossing them into the churning abyss. When Adrian awoke, he was lying on a beach, the sound of gentle waves slapping at the shore. He groaned as he sat up, his body aching from the ordeal. Lorien was nearby, sprawled on the sand but alive. Their ship, however, was nowhere to be seen. Instead, They were surrounded by the remnants of their supplies, scattered like driftwood across the beach. The island they had washed upon was unlike any Adrian had ever seen. The sand glittered faintly, as if imbued with starlight, and strange plants with luminous flowers grew in tangled clusters. A faint humming filled the air, as if the island itself was alive. Adrian pulled out the map, relieved to find it intact. To his astonishment, the glowing runes now pulsed with a soft light, their shapes shifting to reveal a path leading deeper into the island. "This place," Lorien said, his voice hoarse. "It feels different." Adrian nodded, his eyes scanning the landscape. "It's here," he murmured. "The entrance to the cavern must be here." Following the map's guidance, the two men ventured inland. The jungle was dense, its air heavy with the scent of salt and strange blossoms. As they moved, Adrian noticed signs of ancient civilization, crumbling pillars encrusted with barnacles and carvings depicting mermaids in graceful poses. The deeper they went, the louder the humming grew, until they emerged into a clearing. At the center of the clearing stood a pool of water, its surface smooth as glass. Surrounding it were jagged stones, etched with runes identical to those on the map. Adrian knelt beside the pool, peering into its depths. Far below, he could see the faint glow of an underwater portal, a swirling vortex of light that pulsed like a heartbeat. "This is it," Adrian said, his voice trembling with awe. "The entrance to the cavern." Before they could descend, a low growl echoed from the jungle. Adrian and Lorien spun around, swords drawn, as a massive shadow emerged from the underbrush. It was a creature unlike any they had ever seen. A hulking beast with scales that shimmered like the silver scale Adrian carried, its eyes glowing with an eerie intelligence. The guardian of the entrance. Lorien stepped forward, his blade ready, but Adrian held him back. "No," he said, a sudden clarity washing over him. "This isn't a fight we can win. It's testing us." Adrian slowly reached into his satchel and withdrew the silver scale. Holding it up, he approached the creature, his heart pounding. The beast sniffed the air, its glowing eyes fixed on the scale. After a tense moment, it lowered its head and stepped aside, revealing the pool once more. "Let's go," Adrian said, his voice steady, but his hands trembling. Together they stepped into the pool, the water enveloping them in a cold embrace. As they sank deeper, the glowing vortex grew brighter, pulling them into the unknown. And then the world went dark. When Adrian and Lorien emerged from the darkness, they found themselves in a realm that defied description. The underwater cavern was vast, stretching farther than the eye could see, its ceiling shimmering like the surface of a moonlit lake. Towers of glowing coral rose from the seabed, their vibrant colors painting the water in hues of gold, emerald, and sapphire. Schools of fish, glowing faintly like living stars, wove intricate patterns in the water. Their movements synchronized with an otherworldly rhythm. It was a world both haunting and beautiful, filled with a silence so profound that even their breathing seemed intrusive. And then, through the stillness, a sound emerged, a soft, melodic hum that grew louder with each passing moment. Adrian felt it vibrate in his chest, a song without words that stirred something deep within him. He glanced at Lorien, who nodded, his eyes wide with wonder. They swam forward, following the music, and soon the source came into view. At the heart of the cavern, a grand hall unfolded, a circle of towering stone pillars encrusted with pearls and silver veins that glowed faintly. At the center of the hall, a group of figures moved gracefully, their voices weaving together in an ethereal harmony. The mermaids. Adrian and Lorien approached cautiously, their movements slow and deliberate. The mermaids were, as the legends described, their upper bodies human-like, with skin that shimmered like moonlight on water, and their lower halves adorned with tails that glistened with scales of every imaginable hue. Their eyes, however, were what captured Adrian's attention, ancient and knowing, as though they had witnessed the rise and fall of empires. The singing ceased as the mermaids noticed their approach. They turned as one, their expressions unreadable. From their midst, a single figure emerged. She was taller than the rest, her presence commanding yet graceful. Her hair flowed like silver silk, and her crown of coral and pearls marked her as their leader. Adrian felt the weight of her gaze as she studied him. "You are bold to enter our realm, mortal," she said, her voice resonating like a melody that echoed in the very water around them. "Few have dared to come this far. Fewer still have returned." Adrian bowed slightly, his heart pounding. "I seek the secret of immortality," he said, his voice steady despite the awe he felt. "Not for myself, but for my people. They suffer from a plague that no healer can cure. I believe your secret could save them." The leader's lips curved into a faint smile, though it was neither kind nor cruel. "Immortality is not a gift, Prince. It is a burden, a trial of the soul. If you seek it, you must prove your worth." "What must I do?" Adrian asked, his resolve unshaken. The leader gestured, and the other mermaids parted, revealing a massive stone archway carved with intricate runes. Beyond it, the water seemed darker, heavier, as though it carried the weight of 1,000 secrets. "You must pass the trial of the tides," she said. 3 tests await you. Each will measure the strength of your heart, mind, and spirit. Should you fail even one, you will not leave this place. Lorien stepped forward, his hand on the hilt of his sword. "And if he succeeds?" The mermaid's gaze shifted to him, her eyes glinting with something unreadable. "If he succeeds, he will be granted what he seeks. But beware, every choice comes with a cost." Adrian exchanged a glance with Lorien, who nodded silently. Turning back to the mermaids, Adrian straightened his shoulders. "I accept the trial." The leader raised her arms and the water around them began to churn. The runes on the archway flared to life, casting long shadows across the cavern. The melody returned, a haunting song that seemed to guide Adrian forward. "Enter the gateway, Prince," the leader said, her voice both a command and an invitation. "Face the tides and prove your worth." As Adrian stepped through the archway, the water grew colder, its pressure heavier against his chest. The glow of the cavern faded behind him, replaced by an oppressive darkness. Yet he pressed on, driven by the faces of his people, their suffering etched in his mind. Lorien followed close behind, his presence a steadying force. "Whatever comes," he said, his voice muffled in the water, "we face it together." Ahead, a faint light appeared, flickering like a distant flame. Adrian swam toward it, his heartbeat quickening. The first test awaited, and though he did not know what lay ahead, he knew there was no turning back. The trial of the tides had begun. The light ahead grew stronger, shifting from a faint flicker to a steady glow that illuminated the water around Adrian and Lorien. The darkness of the cavern gave way to a chamber of shimmering coral spires, each pulsating with its own rhythm of light. In the center stood 3 paths, each leading into the unknown. As they approached, the leader of the mermaids appeared once more, her form materializing from the water as if summoned by the currents themselves. "You stand at the gates of the trial of the tides," she said, her voice echoing in the chamber like a song carried on the wind. 3 tests await. Each will demand a piece of you. Your courage, your heart, and your truth. Choose your path, but know this: the order in which you face them is also a trial. Adrian hesitated, glancing at the 3 paths. One shimmered with golden light, warm and inviting. Another was cloaked in shadows, the faint sound of rushing water emanating from its depths. The final path was lined with jagged stones, glowing faintly with an ominous red hue. "I will take the path of shadow first," Adrian declared, his voice steady, despite the unease in his chest. The mermaid's lips curved in a faint smile. "The test of courage," she said. "May the tides guide you." The test of courage. Adrian and Lorien ventured into the shadowed path, the light behind them fading until only a dim silvery glow lit their way. The sound of rushing water grew louder, becoming a deafening roar. They emerged into a cavern where a river of dark churning water flowed violently, its surface broken by jagged rocks. On the far side of the river, a glowing orb hovered, casting a faint light over the cavern. Before Adrian could move, the water surged, and from its depths emerged a monstrous sea serpent. Its eyes glowed with an unnatural light, and its scales shimmered like liquid metal. It coiled itself around the orb, hissing menacingly. Adrian drew his sword, the blade trembling in his grip. "We need the orb," he said, his voice firm. "It's the key to the next path." The serpent lunged, its fanged maws snapping dangerously close. Adrian rolled to the side, narrowly avoiding its strike. Lorien charged with his own blade, distracting the creature long enough for Adrian to move closer to the orb. Each step was a calculated risk, the serpent's movements swift and relentless. Spotting an opening, Adrian leapt onto a rock jutting out of the river. The serpent turned its attention to him, its glowing eyes locking onto his. Adrian steadied his breathing, then hurled a stone toward a distant point in the cavern. The sound distracted the creature for a moment, just long enough for Adrian to snatch the orb from its resting place. The serpent let out a deafening roar, its body thrashing violently. Adrian and Lorien scrambled back toward the entrance as the cavern began to collapse, the orb glowing brighter with every step. Just as the serpent's tail struck the ground behind them, they dove through the passage, narrowly escaping as the path sealed itself shut. Breathing heavily, Adrian held up the orb. "One test down," he said, though his voice was laced with exhaustion. "What comes next?" "The test of sacrifice." Returning to the central chamber, Adrian placed the orb into a hollow at the base of the coral spires. The second path, the golden one, began to shimmer more brightly, beckoning them forward. This time, the mermaid leader's voice echoed in his mind. "Your heart will guide you, but beware, sacrifice does not come without pain." The golden path led to a tranquil lagoon, its waters so still. They reflected the ceiling above like a mirror. In the center of the lagoon, a massive pearl rested atop a pedestal, glowing with soft light. Adrian stepped forward but froze as the water around him rippled unnaturally. Lorien cried out as kelp-like tendrils shot out from the depths, wrapping around his legs and pulling him into the lagoon. "Adrian!" Lorien shouted, his voice muffled as the water closed over his head. Adrian hesitated, his eyes darting between the drowning night and the pearl. He understood the trial. To save Lorien would mean forfeiting the pearl, but to take the pearl would mean abandoning his friend. Clenching his jaw, Adrian threw down his sword and dove off into the water. The kelp tightened as he reached Lorien, their grip relentless. Straining with all his might, Adrian tore at the tendrils, freeing his companion just as his own breath gave out. They surfaced together, gasping for air. As Adrian helped Lorien to the shore, the lagoon shimmered, and the pearl floated toward him. "You have chosen well," the mermaid's voice whispered, her tone approving. "Sacrifice must come from the heart." The pearl joined the orb at the coral spires, and the final path, the jagged red one, began to glow. Adrian exhaled deeply. "One more test," he said, his resolve stronger than ever. "The test of truth." And with that, they stepped into the final trial, the weight of their choices heavy on their shoulders. Adrian and Lorien stepped onto the jagged red path, its glow casting eerie, flickering shadows across the rocky walls. The air grew heavy with an unspoken tension, and the water around them felt strangely still, as though holding its breath. The mermaid's voice echoed in Adrian's mind once more. The test of truth will strip away all illusions. Be warned. What you seek may not be what you find. The path led them into a cavern unlike the others. The walls were smooth, polished as if by centuries of unseen hands. And in the center stood a mirror of water suspended in midair. It rippled faintly, reflecting not their surroundings, but the vast ocean beyond. The mirror's surface shimmered with colors that shifted and swirled, forming fleeting images that vanished before Adrian could fully grasp them. The mermaid leader's form appeared beside the mirror, her presence commanding yet calm. "This is the mirror of truth," she said, her voice resonating through the chamber. "It reveals the deepest desires and fears of your heart. To pass this test, you must answer its questions with absolute honesty. Deception will lead to destruction." Adrian stepped forward, his reflection appearing in the mirror. But it was not the man he had seen in his own reflection countless times before. This version of himself was older, weary, with eyes that carried the weight of countless losses. His hands were empty, and the crown of Lyrian rested at his feet, tarnished and forgotten. The reflection spoke, its voice identical to Adrian's but tinged with sorrow. "Why do you seek immortality?" Adrian hesitated, the weight of the question pressing down on him. "To save my people," he replied at last. "They suffer from a plague, and I believe the secret of immortality can cure them." The mirror rippled, its colors darkening. "And yet, you do not seek this for yourself. Do you fear death? Or do you fear being forgotten?" Adrian's breath caught. The words struck a chord deep within him, unearthing a truth he had long buried. "I fear being powerless," he admitted, his voice barely above a whisper. "I fear watching my kingdom fall and knowing I could have done more." The mirror grew still, reflecting only Adrian's weary face. "You are brave to admit this," the mermaid leader said, her tone approving. "But bravery alone is not enough." The mirror shifted, now displaying the faces of the people Adrian sought to save. The villagers stricken with illness, their faces pale and gaunt. He saw children clutching at their mothers, their eyes hollow with despair. But then the image changed, showing Adrian himself, standing alone in a vast empty hall. His face was unchanged, but everything around him had aged, decayed. The crown rested on his head, but it offered no solace. "This is the price of immortality," the mirror whispered. "To save them, you must bear this burden alone. You will outlive them all, your people, your friends, even your kingdom. You will walk the earth as a solitary shadow, forever unchanged." Adrian staggered back, the weight of the revelation crashing over him. He glanced at Lorien, who watched in silence, his loyalty unwavering. The choice was clear, but it was no less agonizing. "I cannot," Adrian said at last, his voice trembling but resolute. "Immortality is not a cure. It is a curse. If saving my people means losing myself, then I will find another way. I will take only what I need to heal the plague. no more. The mirror's surface shimmered, and the mermaid leader stepped forward, her expression unreadable. "You have chosen wisely," she said. "Few have the strength to reject the allure of immortality. For this, we will grant you a fragment of the heart of eternity." The cavern shifted, the jagged walls giving way to a glowing crystal that pulsed like a living heart. Adrian approached it cautiously, feeling its warmth radiate through the water. The mermaid leader extended her hand, and a small shard of the crystal broke away, floating into Adrian's grasp. It glowed softly, its light both comforting and powerful. "This fragment contains enough power to heal your people," the mermaid said. "But remember, Prince, true immortality lies not in the body, but in the legacy you leave behind." Adrian bowed deeply, gratitude and humility filling his heart. "Thank you," he said. "I will not forget this." When Adrian returned to Lyrian, the shard of the heart of eternity became the cure his people desperately needed. The plague faded, and the kingdom rejoiced, hailing their prince as a savior. Yet Adrian's gaze often drifted to the horizon, where the waves whispered secrets he alone could hear. The story of the prince who met the mermaids and turned away immortality became a legend, a tale of courage, sacrifice, and wisdom. And deep beneath the waves, the mermaids sang a song of the mortal who had earned their respect, his choice echoing in the tides for centuries to come, centuries to come, centuries to come, centuries to come, centuries to come.